Well, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine.
How
I
did
didn't
it
have,
go?
I didn't have it done. It got canceled after I got to the hospital this morning.
Oh, well, is that good or bad?
Well, we'll see. I'm waiting to hear from them to reschedule. Just a comedy of errors is what it was, more than
Oh,
anything. Yeah,
oh.
Katina, stop. Katina's laughing. She knows what I'm talking about.
You can't make this stuff up, can you?
No. Because I had not been tested for COVID, they couldn't do the procedure.
Well, I guess that's where it's gotten to.
Yep. They're saying now any kind of surgical procedure, you have to be tested for COVID-19 at least 4 days prior to and have proof of the test.
4 days prior.
4 days prior.
Well, I went today to get tested.
Oh, did you?
Good for
Stood
you.
for 2 hours in line, so
Oh, no.
Where did you go?
the health department.
Oh,
So they didn't ask really any questions, so just stand in line and take the test, and 2 to
Go.
5 days you'll find the results. So
how long did it results?
2 to 5 days. So
Are you feeling ill or just want to be safe?
I have allergies and I don't really get a fever easily. So plus if they let us fly, they let me fly, I want to be sure, yes, I can tell them I do not have it. So just for the peace of everybody, because I'm coughing and it's allergies, I promise. But
Yeah, that's what I have to tell people too with my asthma.
yeah. So we'll see.
How was the test?
It was easy. It was in the throat. It was not the nose.
Oh, okay.
So. It's like a fart. It's like a strep culture. That's what it was like. So everything was fine. So nobody touched anything, or so outside we had to stand in 6 foot separation. So it looked like a really, really, really long line, but I just
They didn't do that at the hospital outside. They did inside, but not outside. That was really interesting to me. They had people congregating at the tables as you go into the hospital doors, and they were in groups of 4 and 5. There was no space in between them. So,
see.
Judy, your sound's not on.
The Fishers are here, but we don't have a video for some reason.
Uh-oh. We'll imagine you. You're looking
There you go.
really nice today, Marcia.
I'm sorry?
Dress? Is that a new dress? I'm imagining you, and you've got nice hair and
Yeah, right. My COVID haircut.
Oh, don't go there.
I keep spinning and saying waiting, so let's see. What if I tap that one? Yeah.
well, we'll just imagine you, and if he gets to working, we'll be glad to see your face, and if not, that's okay too. Did you all get a minute to watch the video this week?
Yes.
Yes.
The last in this series, where this is our final one with Mr. Shea. Did anything jump off the page at you? Well, I tell you what, let's open with prayer. Let's make it Let's start off on a good foot. So let's pray together. Holy One, we give you thanks that you find us where we are, that you come into our homes and fill us with your Spirit. And God, we ask that as we discuss our lesson for this week, that you would inspire us and that you would set us afire with excitement for your word. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Oh, we've lost Marcia altogether now. While I have mine,
Yeah.
hopefully she'll come back to us. All right, well, did anything jump off the page? Into my notes here. Here she comes back.
There you are.
Hey,
You're here.
Now I
looking
see
as
you all
lovely as I pictured.
in my red t-shirt.
I was disappointed that you didn't touch on the other 6.
Yes. So in his book, there are 9. Is that right?
8.
8. Okay. In his
8.
book, that there are 8 of these essential practices, and he only gave us
2.
2. I'd say 2.5. We kind of got a little taste of what he's talking about, but really only 2 that he really zeroed in on. Bill has been wonderful to, as he reads the book, to send me his notes. And so if you are interested in reading the book, I'd encourage you to do that. And if you want to really get into it, Bill has great notes and can discuss it with you.
Yeah. I'm a copious note taker, as Katina has found out.
Yes, and I'm very grateful. I'm benefiting from that practice. So, Bill, was there a practice in the other 6 that he didn't cover that you thought would be beneficial to share with us?
The one that I thought would have probably been the most helpful was the one on meditation, which is what? It's like find the quiet center, practice number 3, finding the quiet center. And he talks about the different forms of meditation that there are and how to go about doing those. I thought that was I thought would have been more helpful than the 2 that he focused on. I know that one of the second one that he talked about, finding the rhythms, he spent a lot of time talking about that when you're doing, I think it was the Gospel of Mark, the day begins at night and moves, and then the seasons begin with the Jewish calendar begins in the fall, and the new year comes in the fall. Fall is the beginning of the new year, and then you go into winter, and then spring, and then summer as the final season of the year, which is a little reverse from what most people think of. We always think of spring as being the first season of the year, and in reality it's fall. And we in the church, the season of the year starts in December, first of winter, instead of in the fall.
It's true, but it's before the winter solstice, so we're still in fall when the church begins. It's right after Thanksgiving when we begin our year.
Yeah. So the other one he did was talking about finding the sense of beauty and focusing our eyes on that, or our talents on that, finding those things that give us joy within creation, whether it's something that we ourselves have created or what someone else has created. I thought that was an interesting way of going about, finding our way in the path. And I think we're referring particularly to the Gospel of John in that, being in the park. So those were the 3 that stood out for me in reading the book. The one that he mentioned in the book about finding the center is Lectio Divina, which is one that I use quite regularly. That's choosing a particular passage and focusing on it in prayer and meditation and so on. And that's what they use in the monasteries a lot. I've been to Gethsemane a couple of times, and Sisters Loretto a couple of times, and that's what they do up there with those kinds of things, with Lectio Divina. Where they choose a particular passage and someone reads it, and then we spend the next 45 minutes just thinking about that particular passage and what it means for you, and so on, what it means for the world. So that's my take on what this particular piece is about.
Thank you.
Now I'll shut up.
No, you're fine. Thank you. The two that he does cover are speak truth in unity, and then absorb the deeper rhythm. So those were the two. If you didn't make note of those, that's where we're looking at. What did you all think about those practices? Did either of those speak to you or feel like something you would want to work on in your own spiritual life?
As I listened to him describing the first one, the first thing that came to mind is what we find in our own book of order, in the gradings of the church. Truth is in order to goodness. And that's what he's talking about. We have to be careful of our own words, being kind in the way we do things when we speak the truth. Be kind, not to be judgmental. And that's what hit home with me in that particular piece he was talking about. Truth
I
is in
wrote
order.
down, don't demonize your adversary.
That's right.
I put a big star by that as well. That was a really profound thing, I thought, especially right now. I feel like we are very, very divided as a nation, and that's a really important thing for us to hear.
Well, I think we're even divided that way within the church,
Mm-hmm.
in the various different ways the different churches are responding to different situations in our world. They demonize each other, and that's a problem, and it's been a problem for a long time. I remember growing up that we weren't allowed to even talk to Catholics. You know, even though there was one that lived right next door to us, we weren't allowed to interact with those kids because they were different from us. They were the other, and so on. There was a Catholic church that was right across the church, the Presbyterian church in Morristown, and we weren't allowed to even interact with them at all. So because they were other. So
I highlighted the quote, love calls to love, and the practice of freedom includes acceptance of yourself exactly as you are, which I thought was really, really important. But that word freedom, I think I put a question mark next to that, and I thought I'd ask you, what is freedom exactly? That's a big buzzword right now in our society, and I think we all seem to have a different definition of it. What are we talking about when we say freedom?
most people think of the Bill of Rights as being the foundation of our freedom in this country, but I think it goes further than that, that when we are rooted in God, we find a freedom that we don't normally get in the rest of the world. I know that sounds rather, but freedom is a hard word to define, because someone's freedom in one place is not someone else's freedom in another place, and so on.
Well, freedom to me is not being captured.
Yeah, or held captive. Yeah.
So, I mean, I grew up in Germany. We didn't have the Constitution, but I mean, we had the German Constitution, but I felt free there. And a lot of people think that other than the U.S., there's no freedom in any other country.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't think that laws are taking away freedom, in my opinion. You know, you have to have laws in order to get some kind of so there's no chaos.
Yeah. Provides the structure within which we can function as a society and as individuals.
Right. I mean, because even in my house, there's laws. They might not be written down laws, but there's rules.
And there are, and you hit on another point. We have unwritten rules in our society. You know, certain behaviors, certain ways that we act, certain ways that we behave. They're not written down anywhere. It's just considered to be, you know, common sense. You know, courtesy. in the way we behave and act towards one another.
I thought about the idea of freedom and safety, and I remember hearing about a school that decided that the children would feel confined if they had the fence, and so they took the fence down. And what they found was that the kids congregated kind of in the middle of the schoolyard. They never went towards the outside edge, where when they had the fence up, they were safe to go there. And you know, I think that has a lot to do with freedom, that, you know, we have freedom as long as we're not harming others. But there are boundaries. You know, those freedoms have to have boundaries as well.
Well, and I think in that sense, we have the freedom. It just the consequences of it.
Yeah.
Is what I don't know. Maybe that's not right either, but I have the freedom to do anything I really want, but I have to then suffer the consequences of what who I might hurt, or what I might hurt, or what I might break, or something. So
Yeah, one of the things he mentions, and one of the other things, is being careful of the words that we choose when we talk. When we're trying to defend or do something. Even though we have freedom of speech, how far does that freedom go? You know, are we entitled, do we have the freedom to tear somebody down, to as they say in culture today, to diss somebody, you know, just because they look different, or they act different, or they behave different, or they dress different.
Or if we just disagree with them.
Or if we just disagree with them. What was it? Somebody posted a thing on Facebook today of a woman going off on a girl who was playing in her own yard. And she was a black girl living in a white community. And the woman was just ranting and raving that she didn't need to be there. And I'm thinking, we can't go on living like that, people. We can't act that way anymore. You know, I thought we'd gotten beyond that, but apparently we haven't.
Well, how do we practice freedom then? If we're not free really to do anything we want, we've got these boundaries that make our freedom safe, then how do we practice our own freedom?
We have to be mindful of the way we act and how we think, and be aware of, as you said, Angie, of the consequences of things that we do or say. Being mindful of that. And then the last part is the last path that he has in the book is realizing that we're not the ones who are ultimately in control. It has basically an issue of trust. Who do we trust? And how do we trust? And who do we put our trust in? And so on. And it's interesting to me that the things that people put their trust in are the things that don't give them the real freedom that they want and that they need. People think
I might step into a nest or something, but the whole thing, I'm free to not wear a mask just because there's no law to wear a mask. It's that you just do whatever you want to do. It's not that you are part of a society, and you know, even if you think there's really no reason to wear a mask to make the other person feel better or whatever, you know, you are not living alone here.
That's right.
So
we're all part of the same world. You know, we're each individuals, and yet we have to be responsible for the other individual. You know, we have to watch out for them as well. We can't be so self-centered that nobody else matters. And that's part
I have the freedom to do don't have to wear it because it's not written anywhere
Right.
means that's my freedom. And
Yeah, and you have the freedom to choose to do so.
right. So
are the limitations, the safe, let's call them safe boundaries rather than limitations, the safe boundaries to our freedom, are they imposed upon us? Is that something that the law does? Or is that something that's internal? Do we do that?
I think it's both.
Yeah, I do too.
I
You know,
think in any, and I say in a relationship, you have to give and take, and so that's part of it. You can't just always just expect or take. It's you do have to give of yourself too.
I think that's from what I've observed, it's the internal boundaries are significantly harder than the external. We're aware of what the laws are. We know what we are allowed to do, and most of us are pretty good at following those rules. It's when we're given the choice: do you wear a mask or not? That's when we have a hard time. We have a hard time putting boundaries around our own freedom. Even acknowledging this would be the safe thing. And I think that's what Shea is getting at, is that just because someone is not physically covering your mouth, just because someone is not physically holding you back, does not mean that we ought to run out and say harmful things, do harmful things. Some of those freedoms we internalize. Some of the boundaries we internalize.
Yeah.
Maybe go by the medical profession's creed, first do no harm.
That's right.
So you have to look at it from that angle.
So the mask is a good example. Can you think of others where we put up our own safe boundaries that we decide, not because I have to, but because I choose to, I limit my own freedom?
When I go to my local market down here in Powell that has 2 customers, when I'm in there, I don't feel so compelled to wear a mask. But when I go to Walmart, oh yeah.
What about our language? There's no law that says I can't just go out into the street and just spew expletives, until my eyes roll back in my head, but I don't. So is that a place where we have put safe boundaries out of respect for the other?
Yes and no. Part of it has to do with the cultural boundaries that are already set.
That's true too.
In terms of the way we talk to one another, or how we talk, period. At one point in his discussion, he says, we had to be very aware of the language that we use, and being aware that sometimes the language that we use can be hurtful to somebody else without us even realizing that it is hurtful. And I think that's part of the issue with what's going on with the whole idea around racism and so on. And so, quote, white privilege, it gets tricky. And it is a risk for us when we have to step out and speak truth to power. It's a risk that we have to take, but at the same time, we have to realize that being careful about the words that we choose, because those words could offend anybody. We don't know where it's going to go. It used to be said, they used to say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never hurt me. That's not true. Words do have the power to hurt in big ways, more ways than one.
Robert Fulghum said, sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will break your heart.
That's right. It can break your heart. It can break your spirit. It can even break you as an individual, as a person. I have watched over the years in families where words were said that could never be taken back. and the damage that it did to those families and to individuals within those families. You know, just shattered the family relationship to the point where there was no going back. Even though they would try to apologize, some people wouldn't accept it. They couldn't go forward, and ended up splitting those families into thousands of pieces.
And we've all seen how harsh words and discouraging words can hurt children.
Yes.
And keep them from reaching their full potential, where a little encouragement makes all the difference.
All the difference in the world. I remember when I was teaching school, I was a teacher before I was a pastor, for those of you who didn't know. I taught school for 7 years before going into the ministry.
No, I didn't know that.
There was a young girl in one of my remedial reading classes. She had a terrible time with reading, and come to find out, she had a severe learning disability. She'd see letters in reverse. You know, she'd see a B, and it wasn't a B. It was an E. She couldn't actually see the loops on the B to form the letter B, and so on. And kids would tease her relentlessly because she could not read, and they called her stupid and dumb and so on. She's now a teacher. She's a school teacher now, because we spent the time showing her that, yes, you have a problem, but we can work with it and work you through it to the point where you can understand what you're doing and moving on. I ran into her just recently. She recognized me. I did not recognize her. And she says, "Thank you for being so nice and so kind to me, but nobody else would even take time to even talk to me." And she says, "It made all the difference in the world. And look at what I'm doing now. I'm now teaching, and I'm teaching children with learning disabilities." And that was amazing to me. Somebody was just taking time to say, "You're okay. You're going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine." And, working with her to the point where she could begin to move forward in her educational processes and so on. I was kind of dumbstruck when she came up to me and said that to me. I didn't know what to say to her. And I just said, "Well, I'm glad I was able to help." That's all I could say.
So this practice of speaking truth in unity, he kind of speaks to the idea that we've misunderstood this idea of unity to mean that we should agree on everything, that there should be that this is what we as Christians believe, where in fact that's not at all the goal for us to agree on everything. The goal is for us to embrace everyone where they are and to hear each other out. And he gave I thought, a really cool image of the Hoyoka, the indigenous role of the Hoyoka, which I honestly, I've never heard of this. So I had to do a little reading about it myself afterwards. They're sometimes evidently called they're called like the jester of the group, because they look so ridiculous. Dressed differently than everyone else, acting differently than everyone else. And so I wonder, how did that image of the Hoyoka sit with you? Did it bring up any images in your mind of our relationships with each other?
Well, there's always somebody in the group who's going to play the adversary. When there's a conflict or a discussion going on, somebody's always going to play the adversary. Even though they may agree with you, they're going to play the adversary. They're going to bring up the as we've done so far, talking about the different ways in which we respond to people. Somebody's going to come along and say, "Well, what about this person? Or what about that person? Or what about this situation? Or what about that situation?" Somebody's always going to have to play the adversary at some point along the way. And that was the role of the Hoyoka, and so on. A lot of times they were people who were, as we would call them today, transgender. They played out two roles. They had both the male and the female side within them. A lot of times those became the medicine men or medicine women in the community or in the tribe. Talking to the people in the Southwest, especially, they talk about, you know, the shamans and the healers. They were people who had both the male and female side to them, and they showed much more empathy as a result of that, and much more compassion.
I thought of a session meeting. Just this past week, we had a 2-hour session meeting where we talked about some hard things. And I thought this is a really a neat image of what we did in a session meeting, was to look at it from all angles. If we do this, how are people affected? If we do this, how are people affected? And it was our job as ministers of the church to look at it from every angle, which is not always easy to do. So I appreciate those voices that can say, now, wait a minute, have you thought about this? Which outside of a meeting, which is designed for us to be working together, can lead to disunity. It can lead to, on Facebook, you've seen it. You see how the comments on articles get, one person says something and another person tears into them, and then you've just created enemies. Whereas in the session meeting, it's a very different goal. If we disagree, it's our job to really discuss those things, see it from all angles, and figure out what's the best course of action moving forward. So I thought this is a great image for a session. And probably in other areas of your life, you have that same experience. You've been on boards and so forth where that's the goal, is to see all angles.
And even in your marriage, if you're, you're not always on the same page, and to be able to listen to the other person's opinion, and and you may not agree, and you may go with it, but the other person has to give you a really good reason for accepting their way of thinking.
So should we make our husbands dress like clowns?
Mine already does. Just kidding.
I don't think Mike would do.
We won't tell him.
I tell him he dresses like a Danny all the time.
I went to a wedding once, and when they brought the groom and his groomsmen in, they played Send in the Clowns.
At least he knew. But let's switch over. We've been talking about the first of the two practices, and we're going to run out of time. I want us to get to the other one. The other one is this this feeling of rhythm. And we did spend a lot of time, Bill, you're right, and one of the others we talked about the rhythm, starting with you have to go through the darkness, starting with the sundown to go through. And he brought in the image of seasons in this one, in addition to the daily calendar. But I wondered, what about other rhythms? Do you have, I don't know if it was in the book, but in the teacher's guide, he talked about, as a new parent, you have a really weird rhythm, that you don't have that sense of day and night anymore, but you kind of work on a really short rhythm where you go through between feedings and diaper changes. And I thought, oh yeah, you forget about that, but you did. We had that rhythm for a while. And I'm finding now, in this time of weird pandemic, I have a totally new rhythm that is very different than it ever has been. The days of the week are different now, and even the times of day are different. So what about you? What kind of rhythms do you have that you can find pattern and solace in?
Well, for me, it's just the daily rhythm of what I go through every day. Depending on what time I get up in the morning, it used to be I would get up at a certain time, and now I have the quote luxury to be able to sleep later, and so on. And that has changed the whole rhythm of the day. It used to be I would bed early. Now I'm a night owl. And that's one of the, I usually don't go to bed sometimes for 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes 2 if I get involved in like watching a movie or whatever. A regular rhythm of when to pray. I used to be, I prayed every morning and every night. Now it's throughout the day. If I'm doing something there, I become much more mindful about what I'm doing and thinking about, even some of the stuff we're doing with Bible study each week. So that has changed. That's one of the big rhythms that's changed for me in terms of that.
I think rhythm is for me. I would not be a good person to work from home because I'm not very. I don't want to say self-motivated, but maybe that's a good word. But
Distracted.
I have to get up. I have to go to work. There's if I would have to do that, I was like, well, I could do this and I could do that first, and so the for me the rhythm to do something for God, I think is my hardest, is my biggest struggle, to find time for Him, because there's always going to be something to me that's, I could do that and I'll do that later. So going to work, it's not a problem because I need to be there. We open at that time, we close at that time. So that I think is a hard rhythm to do. When you have a baby, the baby cries, you're going to have to do it if you want to or not. So
So I get involved with the rhythm of the weather. If it's nice out, I want to work outside. If it's raining, I want to work inside. And if it's hot, I'll take the afternoon off.
He's taken up siestas since
Yeah, I like to take up siesta.
That's a great rhythm. That's a great way to keep in contact with what's going on in the world around you. Follow the leadership of the weather.
Every day I get up and the weather's going to be.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of Andy, if I don't have anything that's pressing, I can fritter away the whole day. I get much more done if I've got goals and places I'm supposed to be, and it's been strange being home all the time.
Hard to find things to keep you occupied. After a while, the same things.
It's fine if you keep occupied.
Bill, you were talking about staying up late, and I mean, we've been binge watching shows, and we'll watch the whole season in one night, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning before we go to bed.
Yeah, I just finished binge
And then
watching.
we say, we must be crazy.
You're not alone, I think.
What you don't know about us was we never watched TV. We did not have a TV when we had kids.
I don't watch very much TV during the day, but I do watch stuff on my tablet. I'll binge watch a movie or whatever that I can pick up at Netflix or Hulu or Prime Video or whatever. I'll watch something there before I'll watch anything that's on TV now. The TV is very seldom, if ever, on now. And Pete had one of these huge television screens. I mean, this thing, it must be 100 inches across. I mean, it takes up a whole shelf, literally. It covers the whole wall, and it's never on. It's never on. So I prefer to watch it on the screen here if I'm going to watch a movie. I will say I do have one I'm waiting for. I can't wait for Hamilton. It's coming out July the 3rd on the Disney Plus channel. So I finally get to see a play that I've been wanting to see for ages.
Friends, we are under a minute, so I'm going to pray with us. This has been a wonderful study, and I look forward to starting a new one with you next week. Let's pray. Holy One, we give you thanks for this time of discussion, and we ask that you would help us to find rhythm in your breath, that we would breathe you in and exhale your goodness into the world. Help us to be a light for those who are in darkness, and help us to lead the way for those who are lost. These things we lift